Ladies and gentlemen, to put God first is to embark on a profound inner journey, a journey that calls us to align with the deepest essence within ourselves and the universe. It is not merely a matter of external rituals or empty words, but a transformation of the soul, a conscious act of surrender to a greater reality that transcends the ego. To truly put God first, one must begin by recognizing the divine within. This recognition is not something that happens on the surface of consciousness, but rather in the depths of the inner world, the silent, often unexplored realm of the soul. The divine is not merely an external figure or a distant entity to be worshipped from afar. It is an archetypal presence that dwells within each of us, waiting to be acknowledged and embraced. In the complexity of our everyday lives, it is easy to lose sight of this sacred spark. The noise of the external world, the distractions of ego-driven pursuits, and the constant chatter of the mind can blind us to the stillness that resides at our core. Yet, beneath these layers, there lies a quiet and eternal presence, a source of profound wisdom and unconditional love that connects us to something far greater than ourselves. To recognize this divine within is to awaken to a reality that transcends the limitations of the ego. It calls for turning inward with courage and sincerity, engaging in honest self-reflection and meditation. It is through this inner journey that we come to see ourselves not merely as isolated individuals, but as vessels of the sacred mystery that permeates all life. This realization is both humbling and empowering, for it reveals that the same creative force that brought forth the universe also breathes life within us. This awakening requires patience and openness, as the divine often speaks in subtle symbols, dreams, and intuitive insights rather than loud proclamations. It invites us to listen deeply to the whispers of the heart, the stirrings of the soul, and the quiet urgings of conscience. As we cultivate this awareness, a transformation begins. The self expands beyond its narrow confines and begins to resonate with a sense of unity, harmony, and meaning. Ultimately, recognizing the divine within is the foundation for putting God first. It reorients our values, reshapes our intentions, and guides our actions toward alignment with the sacred. In this light, every thought, word, and deed can become an offering to the divine presence that dwells in us all. To put God first, one must also bravely embrace the shadow within, the hidden, often uncomfortable parts of ourselves that we tend to avoid or deny. The shadow is the collection of traits, emotions, desires, and impulses that do not fit into the idealized image we hold of who we ought to be. It is the darker side of the psyche, where fear, anger, jealousy, and shame often reside. Yet, this shadow is not an enemy to be defeated or discarded. It is a vital part of the whole self, a guardian of truths that our conscious mind may be reluctant to face. Ignoring the shadow only deepens fragmentation within us. It leaves these disowned aspects to fester in the unconscious, influencing our behavior in ways we do not fully understand or control. This inner division creates conflict, confusion, and disconnection from the authentic self. The path to putting God first demands that we stop running from these shadows and instead turn toward them with courage and compassion. To embrace the shadow is to invite these hidden parts into the light of awareness. It means acknowledging our imperfections, our vulnerabilities, and the less flattering impulses that we might rather hide. This process is not comfortable. It often involves confronting painful memories, uncomfortable feelings, and inconvenient truths about ourselves. But in doing so, we begin to dissolve the walls of denial and illusion that separate us from wholeness. When we accept the shadow, we begin to see that it holds immense potential for growth and healing. The shadow contains raw, untapped energy that, when integrated, can fuel creativity, deepen empathy, and strengthen resilience. By embracing what we have long feared or rejected, we reclaim lost parts of ourselves and become more whole, authentic, and grounded. Moreover, this acceptance transforms our relationship with God. Instead of approaching the divine as something perfect and separate from us, we come to understand that God's presence includes and embraces all aspects of our being, light and dark, joy and sorrow, virtue and imperfection. This realization cultivates humility and grace, recognizing that spiritual wholeness is not about being flawless, but about being honest and whole. In this light, embracing the shadow is an act of profound spiritual courage and love. It breaks the chains of self-rejection and invites us into a deeper communion with the divine, who meets us not only in our brightest moments, but also in our brokenness. To put God first, therefore, is to journey inward, to hold ourselves tenderly in the face of all our complexity, and to find sacredness in the fullness of who we are. To put God first is to live in alignment with your higher self, a luminous presence within that calls you beyond the narrow confines of ego and superficial desires. This higher self is the voice of inner truth, the essence of your being that knows your deepest purpose and the sacred path laid before you. It is the part of you that is connected to something greater than the individual self, a guiding light that leads toward wholeness, harmony, and meaning. Living in alignment with this higher self requires an awakening to inner guidance, a commitment to listen with sincerity and act with integrity. It is not a one-time decision, but an ongoing practice of conscious choice, where each moment becomes an opportunity to step away from distractions and illusions, and step toward clarity and authenticity. This path demands self-awareness, discipline, and a willingness to face the discomfort that often arises when the ego resists surrendering control. When you live in harmony with your higher self, your actions begin to reflect a deeper wisdom that transcends immediate gratification or external approval. You cultivate a sense of purpose that is grounded in values that nurture not only your well-being, but the well-being of others and the world around you. This alignment transforms the way you relate to your daily life, infusing even the simplest tasks with intention and reverence. Moreover, this process nurtures a profound inner peace. The constant inner conflict between who you think you should be and who you truly are begins to dissolve. Instead, a sense of unity emerges, where your thoughts, feelings, and actions flow in concert with the higher truths you hold. This unity is the living expression of putting God first, where the divine within is no longer fragmented or hidden, but fully embraced and enacted. It is important to remember that living in alignment with your higher self is not about perfection or rigid adherence to rules. Rather, it is a dynamic and evolving journey, one that honors your humanity and the complexities of life. There will be moments of doubt, struggle, and failure, but these too are part of the unfolding process. Each challenge is an invitation to return to your center, to realign with that sacred presence within, and to continue moving forward with grace and courage. Ultimately, to live in alignment with your higher self is to embody the divine will within you. It is to become a conscious co-creator of your life and a beacon of light in the world. In doing so, you put God first, not as an external command, but as a natural expression of the deepest part of who you are. To put God first is to learn to trust the mystery that underlies all of existence. This mystery is vast and unfathomable, beyond the grasp of the rational mind and beyond the limits of our desire for certainty and control. It is the fertile ground from which all life springs, the hidden source of meaning that cannot be fully understood or explained. To trust this mystery is to surrender the illusion that we must have all the answers or shape life according to our will alone. Human nature longs for clarity and security, and so we often cling to fixed beliefs, rigid plans, or familiar patterns in an attempt to tame the unknown. Yet in doing so, we close ourselves off from the deeper wisdom that flows through the currents of the unseen. Trusting the mystery means cultivating a receptive openness to the unknown, allowing life to unfold in its own timing and according to a design greater than our ego's limited vision. This trust is not passive resignation, but an active engagement with the paradoxes and uncertainties of existence. It calls for humility, a recognition that no matter how much knowledge we acquire, there will always be aspects of life that remain beyond comprehension. It also invites faith, not blind faith, but a courageous willingness to step forward into the darkness, knowing that light will be revealed in due course. When we trust the mystery, we begin to see that life's challenges, setbacks, and even suffering are part of a larger, sacred unfolding. These experiences, painful though they may be, are often the very catalysts that awaken us to new depths of insight and transformation. The mystery holds a deeper purpose, one that calls us to patience and perseverance, inviting us to surrender our need for immediate gratification or easy answers. In this surrender, there is a paradoxical empowerment. By letting go of control, we open ourselves to receive grace, guidance, and support from sources beyond the self. This trust nurtures an inner peace that is not dependent on external circumstances, but rooted in the recognition that we are held within a vast, interconnected whole. It aligns us with the flow of life rather than setting us in opposition to it. To put God first, therefore, is to cultivate this trust in the mystery, to live with a heart open to wonder and a spirit willing to embrace uncertainty. It is to dance with the unknown, guided by faith and an inner knowing that the divine presence is always at work, even when invisible to our eyes. This trust becomes a sacred pathway that transforms fear into courage, doubt into devotion, and separation into union. To put God first is ultimately revealed through the way we serve the greater whole, the intricate web of life that connects each soul to another and to the world itself. This service is not merely about acts of charity or kindness in the superficial sense. It is a profound recognition that the divine spark within us is the same light that shines in every other being. To serve the greater whole is to live with an awareness that our individual existence is part of a much larger, interconnected reality, and that our well-being is inseparable from the well-being of others. When we awaken to this truth, our perspective shifts from the isolated self to the collective heart. We begin to see that every action we take ripples outward, affecting the whole in ways often unseen. This understanding calls us to act with compassion, responsibility, and generosity, not out of obligation or desire for recognition, but as a natural expression of the divine within us. Service becomes a sacred practice, a living prayer that honors the unity of all life. Serving the greater whole also demands humility. It reminds us that no single person holds all the answers or solutions. Instead, we become participants in a greater dance, contributing our unique gifts while remaining open to learning and growing from the diversity of others. This mutual interdependence is a reflection of the divine harmony at the core of existence, where each part supports and sustains the whole. Moreover, serving beyond the self challenges the ego's need for control and personal gain. It invites us to transcend narrow self-interest and to cultivate a heart wide enough to embrace both joy and suffering in the world. Through this expansive love, we find a deeper sense of meaning and fulfillment, grounded in the knowledge that our lives matter beyond ourselves. In putting God first, serving the greater whole is an embodiment of faith made visible. It transforms spirituality from a private experience into a collective reality, weaving together the threads of humanity, nature, and the sacred. This service is a continual reminder that to honor the divine within is to honor the divine in all, and that true spirituality flourishes only when it flows outward in love, care, and justice. Ultimately, this call to service nurtures a profound sense of belonging and purpose. It connects us to the eternal rhythm of life, where giving and receiving, healing and growth, are forever intertwined. To serve the greater whole is to live in harmony with the sacred order of existence, and to become a living vessel of divine love in the world.